Salutations and greetings. Welcome to League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys. We've got that little bit of an awkward gap between the end of the regular season, or the end of the playoff run, and MSI, where we got to wait before the action comes, which means we got time to revisit all the action in the spring split. And Mark, you remember, we did some preseason team rankings and the player rankings ahead of the split. We're going to take a look back at those and redo them, because they're a little bit different now.
Yeah, I think this is the type of situation, the perfect time here, right, between playoffs and MSI, and getting into here now where we thought we would see the performances land from a lot of these players and teams and what the actual reality was. And some of them really close, and some of them you would get some surprises in the positive, and hey man, we certainly saw a lot of surprises in the negative.
The double thumbs down. We'll start in North America, just going to go position by position, starting up in that top lane, where one of the big anomalies here, obviously on our preseason listings, we had Lorlo on there for Echo Fox. Thought he would start over Solo. Obviously, he didn't see any games, so that one's a little bit wrong.
Yeah, but, that one's certainly not right here. And one of the things that we expected with Lorlo is that he would be that starter there. But I give props here to how Solo performed. I think he did really solidify himself as one of these guys that can hold an LCS roster spot, and did end up being a positive factor here for Echo Fox.
And the one we got right, Dokla. Our boy in at number 10. I don't think you can argue that he was the most underwhelming performer amongst all these top laners. Another guy who was very underwhelming was Huni. He turned it on a little bit towards the end of the split, but I mean, basically he's playing Vayne and Lucian every single game the last couple of weeks. He died a lot on Echo Fox. He one-upped that here this year in Clutch.
Yeah, it was not the type of performance that you wanted to bounce back from Huni. It was better than what we had seen probably last summer, but I think as far as the expectations go, and as far as Huni's career expectations would be, he would want a better performance from himself.
And rookie of the split, Viper. We knew he could finish higher than we originally ranked him in these preseason ones, but obviously he fully delivered on FlyQuest, helped them to a top 4 finish. Rookie of the split, as I mentioned. So he's top 5 after the spring split, because he did some great performances in the playoffs and throughout all the regular season.
Well, you can see a little bit of a pattern here with the rookies as far as Broken Blade and Viper. We were very cautious about the inexperience at the LCS level here, being on that main stage in front of all these fans, talking about what the performances would be, and Viper absolutely delivered this split for FlyQuest, making that risk here of trying to replace Flame with a young top laner here from the Team Liquid Academy. Viper steps up, plays his carry style, busting out the Riven, getting the Riven bans here. This was a great rookie split from him in the top side for FlyQuest.
And it was arguably an even better split for Broken Blade. He climbed up all the way into that top 2, and this is a guy who you're not going to see the crazy KDA or the laning numbers that you might see from someone even like Someday on a struggling 100 Thieves squad, but the team fighting that Broken Blade did throughout the entirety of the split, whether it was Vladimir, Irelia, Aatrox, Akali, pretty much any champion, he could completely take over games for TSM.
Right, and one of the important things here actually about Broken Blade, and something that not a lot of people have been talking about, is in that first playoff series against Echo Fox and into the one against C9, he was himself drawing 1 or 2 bans per ban phase. That is a type of play here, that type of respect here for what performances people have seen Broken Blade deliver on the LCS level stage here. That is why he finds himself up here in the rankings.
And he is right behind Licorice after that spring split. And I know Broken Blade got the better of him in that series. I think he outperformed him, but I still think Licorice overall was a consistent top laner for Cloud9, the most consistent throughout the entirety of the split. But come summer, we might be talking about Broken Blade in that top spot, and obviously Someday, just one of many 100 Thieves that fall lower than we expected in the preseason. Let's move on to those junglers, where this was the only all-pro position this year that didn't feature one of the top 3 squad members, and deservedly so. He's in at number 1, Santorin. He was hyped up, I mean, for the majority, actually he wasn't hyped up at all, what am I saying? Preseason, he fully went under the radar, but before we get to him, I mean, Onda, we can talk about 100 Thieves, guys.
Oh man, hey, let me just say right out the bats here. If you're a 100 Thieves fan, I won't feel bad if you close this video, because I'll tell you what, it ain't going to be
probably already did.
It's not going to be positive for you all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, someday is going to be your highest finished guy. Top 4. Onda didn't live up to the hype at all. I think we thought he'd have dominant lanes, side lanes, and just wasn't able to cash in. Wiggly comes in. He pretty much performed, I think, what we expected out of him. Meteos and Dardoch, we weren't entirely sure who was going to get more time. Thought it would have been Dardoch. It ended up being Meteos, but he actually performed pretty well on Optic.
Meteos did have a good performance with Optic Gaming. You had to look at the type of chemistry that he was able to develop with the starting roster there for Optic Gaming, and I think specifically he was able to play really well with Crown and develop this type of control around the map, was something that I did like to see from that duo there with Optic Gaming. And I think you have to be right here when you're looking at the two there with Meteos and Dardoch as your two options. You got to make a decision, I think, right now. You can't be keeping someone as talented as Dardoch down in the academy when it's quite clear good enough for a spot here on some of these starting teams.
Yeah, you got to expect some other teams are going to be coming calling over to Optic for one of those guys. Obviously, missed the mark a bit on contracts. I thought maybe bringing in Froggen and Haunser would really kind of be able to skyrocket him to dominate some of the early games, but he's still getting caught out a lot, still dying way too often and unnecessarily so. So he goes down a few from what we thought initially. Now, Grig. When we did this, I believe it was right around the time there were rumors about his wrist issues and maybe Acadian was going to start, but we still went with Grig in at number 6, and Acadian performed incredibly well on TSM.
Grig's position here was at the point of, talking about when we found out about the wrist injuries, we had said that, yes, we expect Grig to have an impact here for TSM and be good, but that Acadian would be someone that will see some starting time here, and you do have to keep the possibility open that Acadian gets the starting role and runs with it. And that's exactly what happened. After a shaky week 1, week 2, Acadian really started to show up for TSM, develop that synergy with Bjergsen in the mid lane, and hey, even more important than developing that synergy with Bjergsen, the way he played with Broken Blade on the top side of the map for TSM really set them up to have a wide variety of ways to win the game.
And the top 3 kind of what you would have expected, save for Santorin being this high up. And I mean, there were a lot of guys who put up fantastic performances for FlyQuest, and that's why they were kind of that clear A-tier team right below those top 3 squads. But Santorin had another fantastic split, and I think you saw in summer, he kind of flew under the radar as one of the top junglers, and this split, he was just very clearly, when he was on the Rift, he was one of the most dominant early game forces in the league.
Right, that was one of the things we were keeping our eye on heading into this split, was the numbers that we had been seeing from Santorin in the past summer. There were clear signs here that Santorin was having success. He was fitting in really well with this FlyQuest organization, and it would be a question of whether some of the changes they made here in this past offseason, whether that would allow him to continue to thrive. And it absolutely was the case here. FlyQuest was thriving, and Santorin, a huge part of the engine driving them forward.
Yeah, and he's one of the big surprises that we maybe missed the mark on a bit, maybe underestimated him coming into this split. Coming up after the break, we go to the mid lane, and it turns out the hype of the offseason, who he coming over to 100 Thieves, didn't quite live up to our expectations. Hello, dudes and dudettes. Welcome back to League Unlock, where we're looking back at the LCS that was the spring split. We're revisiting our preseason position rankings and redoing them after the spring split because they definitely need some changing. Moving on to those mid laners, and if you remember the hype in the preseason, 100 Thieves, we all know this should be a top 3 team. The perfect situation, he can roam around, and Mark and I thought, you know what? This guy's going to be a top 5 mid laner this split. He's going to get back to 2017 CLG form. Mark, it didn't happen. It didn't happen at all.
No, it was not even close to happening, man. This was an ugly performance all around the board, and I think here the problem is really that, yes, you got to put a good deal of that on the performance of who he himself. I think, yes, the 100 Thief situation plays into his performance and lack thereof, but it certainly is a disappointment when we consider the positives of what we can see from his play and his potential that we've seen in the past, and thinking about what was available with 100 Thieves and what should work out. None of it worked out, and his performance didn't work out either.
And I think another kind of disappointing team and performance was Power of Evil. I think he was still clearly the best player on this CLG squad, but we thought maybe this should at least be a playoff team, 6th place, and maybe fight for that 5th spot, but they looked completely lost at times. They did get close to that playoff spot. I mean, 1 away from taking down Echo Fox and getting it, and they even had the lead, but I think I expected at least more out of Power of Evil.
Right, the expectation is there because last split you had Power of Evil on Optic Gaming and pretty much dragged them almost into a playoff spot there at the very end. So you're thinking, okay, the move up here to CLG, a little bit more established players here with this roster, you got to be able to find that success again and carry your team to the playoffs here. Didn't happen. Again, so close.
One game again.
Once again, it's so hard, man, because Power of Evil is absolutely one of the better players here in North America and clearly does deserve his shot in the playoffs, just not happening so far.
3 splits, no playoff appearances for him. And the man who replaced him, world champion winner crown over in Optic. I think he was maybe the biggest question mark coming into the split, and we weren't sure what version of crown we were getting, but he put on a better 1v9 performance this split than even Power of Evil last year on this Optic squad.
That's the thing. Crown's performance here was more impressive than Power of Evil's was last year with this Optic roster. And even though Optic roster is pretty much the exact same the Power of Evil was running through here, I thought Crown's performances here in the mid lane were really a treat to watch again, because we started to see those flashes again of the old Crown that we had seen before. And I think really the most important thing in reality here is that he seems happy. This is a very important thing. Exactly. Crown has been someone that we've been talking about for the past year or so, struggling with depression, even being a world champion and not seeing the point in winning these type of championships. He's playing professionally here in North America, collecting that good old North American money here, but he's still having fun. It is really fun to see him enjoy himself again in League of Legends.
And when you see any videos behind the scenes with him, he's just such a likable guy. You only want to see success for him, and to get some success, Optic needs a better team around him, because he had to do too much.
Better top laner, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, better top laner for sure. Again, the one lineup that we got very right, Dokla in at number 10. The bottom half was kind of similar to what you would have expected. I think Pobelter performed a little bit better than we were probably expecting, and that's why he's in at number 6. And Niski, the man who replaced Jensen, obviously those are some huge shoes to fill, but I think Niski did more than an admirable job. He fit well with Cloud9 on the Rift and off of the Rift, and he played a very diverse skill set of champions.
I don't think you could have picked a better replacement here for Jensen with this Cloud9 roster, because I tell you what, as far as actual in-game performance, and you watch these Cloud9 performances, I don't think you're going to be able to tell me any type of differences in the level of play that he's brought to the mid lane for Cloud9. But when you mentioned how he has fit in with this Cloud9 team, you got to remember, hey, Cloud9 is pretty much this family type of feel here in the LCS. They have this organization power, and Niski has fit in so well with the image of this roster and this organization. It's a perfect fit, and his play this split really did match up to that level that we had wanted to see. We wanted to see the flashes of Envy Niski, who was able to duke it out with Bjergsen and the likes here in North America, and we did see that talent reemerge itself again.
And we thought this would finally be the split that we're talking Jensen above Bjergsen for the best mid laner in NA, but I think you're looking across the entirety of the split, it's still Bjergsen there in that top spot with Jensen right behind him. And their third, we got Froggen, who also, much like Crown, was a big question mark coming into this split, and I think he performed super well for not played professionally for a full year. He's still the farm-focused mid laner that we've seen throughout all the years, but on some of these games, he was the main win condition for GGS.
Right, and what was really important here about Froggen's performance is that in the first couple of weeks, wasn't up to the expectation.
No more Urgot.
Yeah, exactly. But that was what happened. They decided, okay, let's just fully unleash. Let's let Froggen be Froggen here and play the champions that he always likes to play these off-meta champions that he can play so well and knows the matchups. That's where the advantage is, and they used that, and they got their victories here. Froggen, great to see him back in the LCS, and great to see him have some success again with this Golden Guardians roster. And you're right.
Playoffs.
Hey, man. Yeah, playoffs is great, but Jensen, even better than playoffs, getting his final trophy here. And hey, man, what can you say about Bjergsen's performance then when Jensen picks up his final trophy here and he's still not number one?
Yeah, even in that full best of 5, it's hard to really give a win to one individual mid laner. They both performed super well in that matchup. And here's to many more splits of Jensen and Bjergsen going head to head. Coming up after the break, the best and worst performances in the bottom lane this year. And obviously 100 Thieves are, well, they're on the list. Hello, all you beautiful people. Welcome back to League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys. As always, taking a look back at our preseason player rankings in the LCS and redoing them because, again, they need some red pen all over them to kind of change what's
It's kind of like when you got a really bad result on one of your math tests and your teacher,
Every time.
and you got a nice math teacher, which is lucky, but your nice math teacher says, okay, I'll let you redo the test. And it's the exact same test. You got to get it right now. This is exactly what we're doing, correcting these mistakes, getting it right.
You got to double up that 20% to a clean 40. That's what we're going with here. We're now over to 80 carries, and I think for the most part, you had the top guys kind of living up to the hype, with, of course, the exception of 100 Thieves, which is the theme of this entire list. But even though we had Bang, obviously, as the best 80 carry coming into this split, he wasn't the main issue for 100 Thieves, and let me tell you, there were a lot of issues, but I still think you maybe hover him in that top 5 spot. There wasn't the opportunity for him to showcase what he's actually capable of.
That was very clear. Right from the get-go, the first couple of performances from 100 Thieves, they weren't good, and you said to yourself, yeah, but I can't really judge Bang coming over yet because I haven't really gotten to see him play from anything. He's had to play from behind so many times and play as his team's base is collapsing around him. Well, that was the story as it continued throughout the spring split. We never got to see Bang really pop off. There were a couple flashes, maybe 1 or 2 times I can think of seeing him pop off on the Vayne and the Optic game against them, but still wasn't able to come away with the victory the way they would want. This is not the split that Bang had envisioned for himself coming to North America.
And one of the other big surprises here on this list for me is actually Stixxay. I thought in 2018, him and Biofrost were basically the only positive for that CLG roster, and he had some dreadful games this year, and he had some in 2018 as well. And I'm starting to think now it's just a year or 2 stretch where he was actually a top tier 80 carry.
And this is becoming the problem now for Stixxay that he definitely needs to correct really soon with some strong performances, because a lot of the performances that you've seen from him, again, over the past year and a half, have really started to set in, and you start to think to yourself, is this the average for this player compared to what I had been expecting or hoping to see from them in the past? And right now is Stixxay with Biofrost, who, hey man, we saw some potential. We saw some chemistry with this squad in 2018 summer, and it just did not further develop here. And that for Stixxay specifically is pretty disappointing.
And 2016 MSI looking more like an anomaly than anything else at this point. Piglet, I think we were correct. He didn't quite live up to the LCS return hype. He's still there at
but
number 10.
Where is he on the mid lane ranking? That's the real question.
I think he might go ahead of Soligo, maybe Huhi, maybe slide in at number 10.
Time.
We're extending it to top 12. Arrow and Apollo, kind of similar, along with Deftly, to what you were maybe expecting. I think one guy who performed even better than we thought was Wild Turtle. And basically it's been a theme where 100 Thieves disappointed across the board for their roster. I think FlyQuest impressed for the entire split for how well they performed. We thought they'd be fighting for a playoff spot, but they clinched one pretty easily. And Wild Turtle, for as wild as he's been throughout his career, he was actually pretty consistent this split.
This was maybe the most tame Turtle I've seen in
got a name change.
Split. Bro,
it's got an alliteration, Tame Turtle.
Man, it was fun, and I tell you what, as disappointing as 100 Thieves was this split, and that was a massive disappointment, you are right with FlyQuest in the sense that, hey, you thought there was going to be potential for this squad, but you didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out. Well, everybody stepped up their performance on the side of FlyQuest, Turtle included, and you thought, hey, Turtle's going to be the guy that will have to be the main damage source, be one of the big carries here for FlyQuest, and be always, more or less staying safe, which is not exactly the Turtle way of playing. Turtle still managed to find his way to be aggressive this split with FlyQuest, yet stay safe in that bottom side with JJ. I really liked the performance that Turtle was able to bring out, specifically some of the play on the Jinx. I thought the Jinx pick for FlyQuest was maybe the best in the LCS.
And it's a fun meta for him when he can bust out the Yasuo. I mean, we've seen insane bot lane picks throughout the entire year, and having a flex like that for him, that champion suits his play style perfectly. The top 3 for AD carries, with Bang struggling, it kind of, it's going to be the likes of Sven, Sneaky, and Doublelift, with Doublelift coming in at number 1. Even though it wasn't as dominant as we saw from him in the summer split, I think still safe to say he's the king of ADCs.
Right, I think towards the end of this split, maybe towards playoffs, you could say, man, Sven is really starting to turn it on. He's starting to get the performances here that you might want to put him ahead of the likes of a Doublelift. But the thing here now has to be that, yes, Doublelift is the guy. We've seen these performances time and time again, and throughout the entirety of the split with Core JJ at his side, man, you ain't beating this squad.
You ain't beating that bottom lane, and we roll on to those supports where, again, it's the theme for 100 Thieves, which we'll get to, of them just being... there's no more words, Mark. I don't have any other words to talk about them. And every position, it's the same thing, underperforming for them. We had Afromu at number 2 in the preseason, and I don't think that was an outlandish claim whatsoever. But Mark, the biggest climb of the entire list of player rankings, and by climb, I mean absolute fall down to number 10.
Oh man, this feels so bad, and this is actually like one of the ones where you gotta say completely deserved. The performance here from Afromu, absolutely unacceptable by his standards, by 100 Thieves standards, and by the LCS stage standards. You were not seeing enough from someone who is a veteran leader on this type of roster here. And hey, 100 Thieves has pretty much built their entire organization around having Afromu, his image, things like that. This was really a disappointment split here. And I don't know where you go from here, because this is something that definitely needs to be addressed. And I don't know, I didn't see any signs of positives coming through in the summer split for Afromu yet.
I feel like you've got to believe that a player of his caliber can have that bounce back split, similar to what we saw with Mithy on Origin. So I don't think 100 Thieves give up on Afromu yet, just because of the pedigree that this guy has. But yeah, just a completely unexpected result and performance from him throughout the entirety of spring. You expected him and Bang to be right there with Doublelift and Core JJ fighting for that top bot lane in NA. Wasn't the case whatsoever. The string of guys like Big, I think Hakuo's a guy who overperformed towards when Echo Fox kind of went on the run. Him and Apollo both started stepping up more in the bottom lane, which is why we have him top 5. And I still think Biofrost is the one saving grace on this CLG roster, combined with Power of Evil.
Yeah, I think Biofrost did bring up the performance of the CLG roster. And I think really the important thing, and a thing that has continued to develop for Biofrost and is a very big positive, is the communication and roaming around the map. These type of things have certainly improved since his time on TSM, and that was the reason why TSM wanted to make that move forward, was sometimes lack of communication and the shot calling. And I think right now he is still continuing to develop that, but you're seeing positive signs continued.
The man who fully lived up to the hype in his first split is Core JJ. Far and away the best player on Team Liquid, maybe the best player in the entire league. That's it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.